as I mentioned before, my entire family moved from Arizona to Utah to be close to an appendix cancer specialist. So I got on a state-funded health insurance right away. There's an urgent clause in most state-funded, like Medicaid type programs, where if you move somewhere and you have an urgent disease or situation that you need urgent care, before you're officially grandfathered in or officially adopted into one of the programs, they'll put you on kind of like a temporary thing, so you have coverage, a temporary plan, so you have coverage. So I got put on that right away. Most hospitals have a financial consultant or someone like that to help you navigate insurance and things. So if you ask for that, most hospitals will connect you. And I know I hear a lot of people saying, you know, they have health insurance through work, or they have health insurance through some other thing they're involved in, and so they can't stop working, or they can't go out of state, or they, you know, can't get, you know, second opinions, or can't do anything outside of the confines of what their insurance company says they can do. And like, I totally get that that's a huge problem, but then the thing to keep in mind is, like, you know, you can't like really work anymore if you're dead anyway. So it's important to just, you know, like, if it feels like life or death, then do what you need to do. But I get that that's really, really tough. A lot of work employers who provide health insurance have people whose job it is to help you navigate what insurance will and won't do, and then what options you have if you have to stop working, if you can't work anymore. What, you know, does your insurance have any sort of extension? What other things will you qualify for if and when you have to stop working? Because there are a lot of options out there. So finding advocacy organizations that can help you navigate these things. And keeping in mind, sorry, I lost my train of thought here, but okay, so moving forward with PIPAC trial, how I found the trial. Clinicaltrials.gov has all of the clinical trials that are happening in our country. It has information on what they're doing, who qualifies for the trial, and what doctors are putting on the trial and how to contact them. So clinicaltrials.gov has all that information. I was told after I knew I wasn't a candidate for HIPAC, we met with Dr. Raouf again, and he approved me into the PIPAC trial. My insurance quickly told me that they would not cover anything out of state, period. And, oh, here's what I was going to say. It's important to remember so for me, a lot of the information that I learned and things that helped me on this path only became known because I kept asking questions, and because I kept telling my story and reaching out to different people. One of the people who told me about this, the Clinical Treatment Act, it's called, which is a federal a statement in federal legislation that says Medicaid and most insurances are required to cover a clinical study if it's a qualifying clinical study, if there's, you know, no other option. Like, there's certain requirements that you're required to meet, but that the insurance is required to cover the standard of care portion of a clinical study regardless of geographical location. And that's what it says in this piece of the legislature. Now, we would have never learned this and known this had we not continued to share our story with relevant people. So how we started in this battle with insurance is we read the book The Insurance Warrior by Lori Todd. Lori Todd is one of our PMP pals who's with a similar diagnosis. So we followed a lot of her guidelines in that book, The Insurance Warrior. We also got paired up with an organization called Ask I Can, askican.org. They're a nonprofit organization. Their services are free to cancer patients. They help connect cancer patients with clinical studies and help you navigate the insurance world in doing that. Someone through that organization told us about this Clinical Treatment Act, which when I brought that up to my insurance company, many of the insurance, the customer service people who work for the insurance company didn't even know about this act. So just to like give you some, like kind of paint the picture of how much of a struggle this was, they just kept denying me for getting this, getting the PIPAC study covered based on different reasons. They gave me 3 or 4 completely different reasons as to why they would not cover this. It became really important to document every single conversation that I had with my insurance company, and this is where writing down the reference numbers, writing down the name of who I talked to and what they said became really, really important. We kept moving up the chain of insurance with the insurance company, eventually getting to the point where I had a judicial hearing in front of a judge, me with a judge and representatives from the insurance company. So we had to keep pushing and going up the chain of command in order to do that appeal process and get that to happen. So then with the judicial hearing, the state fair hearing, we actually reached out to some of our state representatives to tell them my story. I don't know if we all know this or need to be reminded that your state representatives work for you and represent you as a civilian and as a member of that state. And so it's okay to reach out to those higher ups in government and tell them your story and what you're having trouble with, and see if there's people out there who can help you. We also got Fox 13 News involved, and they had an investigative reporter do a story on my case. And the investigative reporter actually was present it was a Zoom call, or it was a Zoom meeting for the state fair hearing, and they had the investigative reporter there listening, and the insurance company didn't like that very much and wanted him to leave, but the judge said, it's Ariel's case and her story, and if she wants someone here, they're allowed to be here. And so that really put the pressure on them. And for my statement, I went through and I read how they're delaying my potentially life-saving treatment, and how they've delayed or not responded correctly to the laws that have been put in place to help protect people like me. And as a single mom, I'm here fighting for my life and the life of my child. And needless to say, we won. And insurance was required by the law to cover the standard of care portion of the clinical trial. And so we got it approved. Months later, I went in for PIPAC surgery. As I said before, this part of the PIPAC trial was doing chemo alongside surgery. So I would get chemo every 2 weeks, and then one of those would be replaced with the PIPAC. So it would go like 2 weeks chemo, 2 weeks chemo, 2 weeks PIPAC, 2 weeks chemo, chemo, PIPAC. After my second surgery, I had some complications. They don't really know why. They just said with any abdominal surgery, you can have this situation where your bowels kind of go to sleep. And that seemed to be what happened. It took them a long time to wake up. And I had really bad diarrhea. I had really bad stomach pain. And it just took a long time to overcome that. I ended up being on TPN, IV nutrition, for some time, and it just took me a long time to get put weight back on, start eating a diverse diet again, and now I'm pretty much back to as normal as I can be. I'm eating a variety of foods. I'm able to put weight on. I'm able to do exercises and move my body easier. I've gotten my PICC line out, and so all of my healthcare providers are on board with watching and waiting now. So I'm watching and waiting, hopefully forever. Okay. Mental and emotional treatment. So meditation. I've always been the type of person who kind of muscles through everything, muscles through life. I have been really into high intensity workouts, lifting, running, racing, being competitive. I'm a really competitive person. I come from a really competitive family. So now, since my diagnosis, I feel this call to be more soft, to be more intuitive with my movement, and to do things that feel good in my body, knowing that it's not a competition. So I've been leaning a lot more towards meditation, yoga, gentle movements, just moving in ways that feel good. And sometimes that is pushing myself a little bit. I like to sweat, I like to move, but just not as intense as I have been before. For those naysayers out there, which I know that you're out there, who think that what you think doesn't really matter and doesn't have an effect on what's going on in your body, hear me out. We can give ourselves diarrhea by what we think in our brains. I'm sure all of us have had this experience where you get really nervous and you get really anxious about something, and you're thinking about it, and leading up to it, you all of a sudden have to run to the bathroom like multiple times because now you have diarrhea. It's proof that what you're thinking in your mind just changed what is happening on a cellular level to change the consistency of your stool. What was going on in your brain changed what happened in your biology. So if this can happen in negative ways, right? We think things that make us anxious, we get a stomach ache, we get a headache, we don't feel well. It can also have the nervous shits, Nicole says. It can also happen on the other side. If we've proved now that our cells are listening, our biology is affected, our nervous systems are affected by what we think in our brains, then it can happen in both ways. So we can induce a state of relaxation both by being on the beach, sitting on the beach, listening to the waves, putting our feet in the sand, taking some deep breaths, being there. Or we can do the same thing by envisioning in our minds that we're sitting on the beach, listening to the waves, feet in the sand. Our body doesn't actually know the difference. Now, is it easier to relax, like actually relax, if I'm sitting on the beach in real life? Like, can I relax quicker? Can I induce that state of relaxation quicker? Yeah, maybe. But Your body doesn't really know the difference. Your body only knows, you know, the two ways our nervous system really functions. It's sympathetic, fight or flight or freeze response, or parasympathetic, rest and digest, chill response. And we need both. It's not that one is better than the other, but the place where healing takes place is the parasympathetic rest and digest state. So the more we can tap into that state in a really focused and intentional way, the more we just create an environment where healing is possible. Our body doesn't know the difference between different types of stress. Your body only knows adrenaline, cortisol, epinephrine, all of these hormones that are released when we feel stressed out. It doesn't know if it's releasing cortisol because your husband's yelling at you, or because you have a homework assignment you're worried about, or because a bear is chasing you. Literally, your body doesn't know. It just knows adrenaline, cortisol, epinephrine. It just knows it chemical response. And so it's the same on both ways. Your body doesn't know, where this sense of like chill, relaxation is coming from, and it doesn't really matter. We can put ourselves in that space using a whole variety of methods. Yeah. So we know this, like professional athletes use visualization to improve their performance, and that's something that's been scientifically studied, that performance is improved when athletes have been able to visualize the desired outcome for a sport or a competition or whatever. So this isn't the end all be all. I'm not saying that, we can like meditate our cancer away, but is it beneficial? Can it help? Can it make a difference? Yeah, I totally think it can. I think it can. If we feel better, if we feel more relaxed, that if we can settle into that parasympathetic space more often, that's where the mind becomes more clear, the mind becomes more open, we become more creative, we're more playful, versus a sympathetic response, which, is really helpful if we're running from a bear, or if we're, in a survival state, because it puts your blinders on. You can't see anything else. You're not using your brain for anything besides the one task at hand. And, even the blood goes out to the extremities and to your muscles so that you can move and shift and do the things you need to do. The blood gets taken away from the digestive organs, because you don't need to worry about digesting your food if a bear is chasing you, versus, the parasympathetic response, the blood gets put more towards your digestive organs. It's about digestion, it's about healing, it's about openness and clarity and space. And so again, there's a time and place for both, but in our culture, we spend way too much time, more time than we need to, in that sympathetic place where we're high stress, high strung, and our body can't focus on healing. So meditation can just help induce that parasympathetic state for our nervous system, and just help create that environment where healing can take place. So with meditation, it's not about doing something. It's not about pushing something away or calling something in, or it's really about, I like to use this symbol of opening the palms like this. So when we come into a state of being aware of the present moment as it's unfolding, it sounds pretty simple, like we're just becoming aware of what's happening just right now. It's not what happened earlier, not what's going to happen later. It's just what's happening right now. And oftentimes we use different tools to tether ourselves to the present moment. A common one is breath. And it's not because breath is this woo-woo thing of like, just, breathe and clear your mind. It's because breath is always living in the present moment. That's the only place breath lives. Breath doesn't live in the future, and breath doesn't live in the past. This breath is always happening in this moment. So if we're just paying attention to this breath as it's happening in this moment, then we're here in the present moment. And it's just like opening your palms here, and then you think of this sense of centeredness and this sense of calmness and peace, like this butterfly here, and it comes and your palms are open and it just lands here. And it's like the moment we try to grab it, the moment we're like, oh, that's it, that's where it is, the moment you grab and grasp, it just flies away, it's gone again. And so then we breathe, we open the palms again, and then it comes back and lands again. And we just do that, just again and again and again, opening the palms. And it's like anything, if you do something over and over and over again, your body becomes efficient at it. And your mind is the same way. We create these neural pathways where whatever we do repeatedly, there becomes a clear neural pathway that makes it easy to be there. If you're just stressed out and high strung all the time, it's pretty easy to just like remain there in that space. If you haven't sat down and relaxed and chilled out for a long time, it's going to feel hard at first. Like if you haven't gone to the gym in a while and then you go to the gym and try to work out, you're going to feel stiff, you're going to feel crummy, it's going to feel like, wow, I'm really out of shape. And it doesn't feel that great in the beginning, likely. But if you go to the gym every day, or you go swimming every day, or you go walking every day, whatever, if you do the thing every day, or you do it frequently over a week or two, it becomes easier, right? Like it was really hard to walk around the block today, I did it again tomorrow, the next day. In 2 weeks, I'm gonna walk around the block. It's gonna be like no big thing. And so we create this new neural pathway where there maybe wasn't one before, wasn't very strong, just by practicing this over and over and over again. And it happens the same way in our mind, in our mentality, with meditation. We just do this practice over and over again. I always tell, my people in meditation classes, like, we're not meditating to become better meditators. We're not meditating so that we're good at sitting here being good meditators. Just like we don't do bicep curls so that we're real good at bicep curls. We do bicep curls so that we are stronger, so we have stronger arms so that we can do things with our strong arms. So it's the same with meditating. We're not meditating to become better meditators. We're meditating so that we create a neural pathway that makes it easier to tap into that centered, calm place in other times in our lives when we're not able to just sit there and meditate, but when we're really stressed out, or whether we're in the hospital and feeling shitty and lonely, or in pain, or there's these other situations that normally we respond with stress and anxiety and worry. Can we tap into that place because we've practiced tapping into that place in other times when we felt good enough to really practice and create a neural pathway there. So now it's more easily accessible in other times in our lives. Okay, thanks for coming to my TED Talk on meditation. So things that help me, mantras, just repeating positive, affirmations, words and statements that feel empowering. Poetry really helps me. And these are all things that I use, like I said, before surgery, during chemo, if I'm hospitalized, if something's stressful at home, my nighttime routine. These are all parts of times in my life when this practice of meditation kind of helps me. Movement practices. So the most important thing with movement practices is just to do it, is just to keep moving. So everyone asks, what's the best way to work out? What's the best thing to do? The best thing to do is the thing that you'll do. If you hate running, then don't run, you know. If you know, people are like, oh, you know, CrossFit, oh, it's not good for you. If you love CrossFit and that's what like jives your thing, if you just love that and that's what you want to do, go do that thing. Just do the thing that you want to do. The important thing is to keep moving, no matter what. If you don't move it, you lose it. So for me, now that I'm osteopenic, which is like a precursor to osteoporosis, which is from having had my ovaries removed, I no longer have natural estrogen happening. I have, you know, some bone loss that's happening already. It's important for me to do weight-bearing exercise because it increases bone density. And that's important for anyone going through menopause for any reason, whether it's surgical or just an age-related menopause. It's hugely helpful to lift weights, and women of any age, it's just hugely helpful. It increases bone density and makes it so your bones don't break as easily if and when should you ever fall. Okay, I get regular massages. For me, as a single mom, I go a lot of days where the only person who like physically touches my body is a 2.5-year-old, and hugs are kind of hard to come by from a toddler. And so for me, it's really important to get that sense of touch, and I get that like nurturing, loving, healing touch. And that is like, if I had all the money in the world, I would just have a person who works full time for me and just massages me every morning. Like that would be something that I would spend money on if I had all the money. But so that feels really important for me, is massage. I've talked about therapy, and I think therapy is great if you find a therapist that you enjoy. For me, I've always had a hard time with talk therapy. It always feels to me like I feel like a stirred pot when I leave a therapy room. Like I've just brought up all this stuff and stirred the pot, and then I just leave, and it's like, what do I do with this? And maybe that's because I haven't found someone who I feel like I've gotten a lot of breakthroughs with. I'm a person who I have a fairly easy time talking, obviously, about myself and what I'm going through, and have people in my life I can talk to. But I feel like what I need more in therapy is how to integrate my trauma and my stories with my physical body. And being such like a physically oriented person, like someone who has a really strong mind-body connection, somatic therapy has been a lot more helpful for me than traditional talk therapy. And so somatic therapy, there's all sorts of different ways that people practice somatic therapy. So I've met with a gal who's a traditional, licensed talk therapist or whatever, psychotherapist, and also practices somatic therapy. I've been with a massage therapist who does somatic therapy. I'm now with a craniosacral therapist who's also a licensed chiropractor who practices somatic therapy. So you can kind of come into it from a lot of different modalities or angles. Again, I think it's about finding someone who resonates with you, obviously, and who makes you feel like you're having a breakthrough. And the way that I've found help from somatic therapy, some people are like, what is that? The way I've experienced it is sort of a combination of talk therapy and then physical touch. So for example, and this is just a really vague example, if you're working on setting boundaries in your life, and a big theme that keeps coming up for you is how to set healthy boundaries. The organ system that teaches us how to set healthy boundaries, or the organ system that displays boundary setting, is our skin. And so working with the skin A big one for me has been the kidneys. The kidneys help filter the blood. Blood is related to like familial issues, and our blood, connects us to our ancestry, our past. And so oftentimes I'll have the therapist will come in, I'll be laying on the table, and she'll come in really gently with her hand and cup one of my kidneys and just hold it there. That's also where the adrenal glands sit, right on your kidneys, which are places where hormones are secreted for like a stress response. And so just holding there and talking to me and talking to my energy, saying, I'm here and I'm holding you, and you don't have to do anything. And it's almost like she whispers sweet nothings to my energy. And it's just it feels so relaxing and so much like a breakthrough, that I understand when people get breakthroughs in therapy and get these like aha moments. Like that's what happens for me when I'm receiving like craniosacral and somatic therapy work. They do a lot of holds with the brain, with the head and the brain stem. Again, different organ systems and areas of the bodies that are related to different trauma responses or different issues that you're working through in your life. So that's a little synopsis about somatic experiencing. I've also just started EMDR. I can't really speak to it too much because I haven't gotten too deep into it. I've only done the initial appointment, but it's something like eye desensitization therapy that can help with people who have pretty strong PTSD responses. And for me, like the medical trauma is something that's really real for me right now, where I'm feeling like the coping mechanisms that I used to have and the way I used to feel kind of like tough and I can handle things, I don't feel like that anymore. And I feel like if people talk to me a lot about chemotherapy or a lot about medical trauma or needles and things, it triggers like a visceral response in my body. And so that's one thing I'm really trying to work through, is how to kind of calm down that physical response that I have from a lot of medical talk. And then I'm to the point now in my healing journey, and I really feel like I'm actually just starting my healing journey, with chemo every other week and surgeries and doctor's appointments and this like survival mode living. It feels like now I'm just starting to really have this space to kind of process this all and really lean into the more like therapy healing from everything that's happened to me. Like that process feels like it's just beginning. And so I kind of mentioned this before, like I've met with so many different practitioners that if I meet with someone who's not a total yes for me, then it's a no. If I feel like a doctor is gatekeeping knowledge and information, like if I go in and I get the vibe that they know something I don't know, and they have the healing hands and they have the healing machines and they have what I need to heal, like I need them and I need what they have. If they give me that vibe, it feels like a no for me. The practitioners who I identify with the most and who I resonate with are ones that believe in my healing and ones that believe that I have the capacity to heal myself, and that anything they're offering to me, any modalities, anything they're going to say or do or put hands on me, they're just helping to open up the space for me where my body can heal and healing can take place. And it's not them healing me, which is just something that it's my own personal belief, is that, I need people who are on my team and here with me and helping to create guide me back to what I know and what I know to be true, um, rather than I'm not good enough, or I'm not doing enough, or I don't know enough, or I'm not smart enough, and that I need all these other people. I need you because you're smarter than me and know something I don't know. I just don't really resonate with that type of dynamic between doctors. And that's just, me personally, and something that I think about when I'm meeting a new practitioner. I think that our hands have the capacity to help us heal, our hands and our own body, our voice. And that by like putting hands on ourselves, that we can influence our own healing. Part of the movement practices I've been doing more recently are tapping. I do this sometimes before my meditation classes that I offer. So some of you may have done this with me before, but tapping in different areas, thumping, or even just like energetically kind of like, when I refer to like energy medicine work, the idea behind energy medicine is that all things hold a certain energy. So not just living things, but all things have a certain energy. If we rearrange the furniture in a certain way, it gives us a certain energy. If a person walks in the room, even before they say anything, they hold a certain energy. And so energy is constantly moving around us and affecting us in different ways, and we can harness certain energies and direct energy in a healing way. And so that's something that I just really believe that we have the capacity for. And so I'm really interested in that, and knowing that a lot of this energy medicine work, like when you touch yourself in a loving way and in a nurturing way, you can't harm you're not going to harm yourself. It's not like if you take the wrong chemo and it's going to do something bad, or if you take the wrong medicine and it has these awful side effects. Like, there's no negative side effects really with energy medicine, which is just really cool and feels really approachable. I think is that you don't have to have a degree in anything to be able to learn about energy medicine, or tap into different movement practices that feel good in your body. Okay, that's that. Let's talk about tripping with psilocybin. What is psilocybin? Psilocybin is the psychoactive ingredient of magic mushrooms. It occurs, naturally. It's a chemical compound that occurs naturally in psychedelic mushrooms, and it can also be created in a lab. Psilocybin, just pure psilocybin, can be created in a lab, which is how this clinical study that I was a part of, they provided us with psilocybin that they created. I'm sure most of you have heard by now that a lot of states are offering psilocybin assisted therapy, and in a medical setting, in a clinical setting, for PTSD, for extreme kind of different kinds of trauma issues, and late stage cancer patients, for kind of like the existential crisis that we go through with having a big diagnosis like that. So I was part of a study that was the last leg of a study before they were like compiling all the data and bringing it to legislation to legalize the medicinal use for psilocybin in the state of Utah. And it was not just, they don't just, show up and they just give you this medicine, and with no, they really prepare you for the dosing day. So we had 3 different group therapy sessions, and they were really curious as to what's the right number of people to have in a group therapy session leading up to a dosing day like this, because it's obviously kind of expensive to do it one at a time and have like multiple doctors there with one person. So that was primarily what they were studying, is like what feels the most effective for group therapy and doing this in kind of a group setting. So there were 4 people in my study, and we were all separated by have like our own individual pods on dosing day. So we weren't really like actively engaging with the whole group during the dose day, but we were in the same room, and they had music play blaring, and then they had a doctor, a psychotherapist who was assigned to us throughout the whole process. And so that person was kind of like our partner person who would sit with us and knew what we were going through on a personal level and could kind of be there as a support person. So that was really interesting. I know a lot of states now are offering that. And then I also have had experiences with microdosing for mental health issues. I was on and off a few different pharmaceutical drugs for anti-anxiety and antidepressants, but I never really liked taking those. For me personally, it just felt like, I mean, they definitely served a purpose at the time I was taking them, but I didn't like living in that kind of like foggy place. And with microdosing, instead of like a foggy, dumbed down place, it felt like more of an open, spacious place. It's really hard to explain. But microdosing is, people think like microdosing, oh, you're just taking psilocybin and tripping, but it's really not. If you're tripping and having hallucinating or having visions of things, then that's not really microdosing. That's like more than that. And the microdosing experiences that I've had are really, really subtle. Like I can't, I got to the point where I felt comfortable taking, I knew how much I could take and feel like totally, I drive my car and I parent my toddler, and I feel completely competent and completely able to manage my life and not out of sorts. And it's something that you can take, it's not really like an all the time thing. That's the idea with this big psilocybin therapy as well, is it's not something to do necessarily all the time. It's supposed to help, and its effects are supposed to last for a long period of time, or maybe it's something you do once a year or twice a year, or with the microdosing, I would do like a certain schedule, so not every day, but I played around with different schedules, but then do that for like a month or 2 months, and then take like 1 or 2 months off. So it's meant to kind of last a longer period of time. But I can talk more about that if anyone's interested in that at another time. You can reach out to me. A book that I read that I really enjoyed was Between Two Kingdoms by Sulika Jawad. She was diagnosed with a scary cancer that I don't remember what kind it is now, but it's not appendix cancer. But she's a young person, and she's a really wonderful writer, and I just really enjoyed reading that book as a young person going through cancer. So that one's called Between Two Kingdoms. The last big thing here that I wanted to talk about is just spiritual connectedness. So in my exploration of mortality, as I know we've all been forced to explore more since we've been diagnosed, I've been asking a lot of teachers and mentors in my life, do you believe that what we think about death changes the process of dying, either before or after? Does what we think about it change what happens? And of course, no one can know for sure, because anyone you're talking to about death hasn't died yet. but I found that, and I was just talking with my grandmother about this yesterday, that for me it feels like the more we, the more we examine something, the more we learn about something, the more understanding we have, and the less fearful we are of it. We're always afraid of something we don't know a lot about. And so the more we learn about it, the less scary it becomes. And that just feels true for me in exploring death and these questions. And the common consensus I hear from people who work with dying people is that people who are more spiritually connected in any way tend to have a more positive outlook and a smoother exit, at least from what people can see from the outside. And so in my own exploration of what makes sense for me in spiritual connectedness, I've always had a hard time with organized religion, and I've studied a lot of philosophy in college, and I'm really interested in the comparison of world religions and just dialogue about religions and religious pluralism. And I just want to encourage people to know that you can ask for prayer and you can pray without identifying with a particular religion. You don't have to have a degree in theology to pray to God. You don't have to be taught how to pray. There's not a right way to pray. That prayer is accessible to us in every breath at every moment. And I just hope that that feels encouraging, or that you take that as permission, that it's okay to just pray or to ask for prayer. Yeah, and if you're alive and breathing, you're allowed to pray as much as anybody. So I just wanted to say that. And so kind of to piggyback off of that, one of the guys who presented at our PMP Pals conference, his name's Joel Neeb, and he wrote a book, and I hope if Jamie or someone is here who knows the name of his book, you'll put it in the chat, because I forget. Is it called Survivor's Obligation? Maybe it is. But he did a wonderful talk about how we all have this sense of survivor's guilt. We have this guilt about we're the ones who survived, and there's all these people dying around us who have similar diagnosis, and shifting that survivor's guilt into an obligation called survivor's obligation to live well, an obligation to live your best life because you've been given the gift of life and the gift of surviving. And so this thought came to me that for me, I have more than survivor's guilt. I have this privilege guilt. I have guilt that I have the privilege of meeting with all these doctors, having the money to do this, having the ability to move my whole family where the specialists are. I have all of these things that I know are such a privilege that I know not everyone has, and I have this guilt associated with that. And so shifting that privilege guilt into privilege obligation, because I'm privileged and able to live this privileged life, it's my obligation to share my story. It's the least I can do to hold up my light so that we can all see better. And I just want to encourage all of you, you never know when your story is medicine to another person. You never know when you're going to say something about your story and your path that is going to flick on a light bulb for someone else. And so for me, even if that's one person, even if I say one thing that's resonated, that's worth it to me. And something important that Joel mentioned too that totally resonates with me is this need to give, that giving and being generous, volunteering, offering your skills and your time just freely is so healing for you. And I know for me, my family has been touched by addiction recently, like in the last, year and a half, the same time I've been going through this diagnosis. A close person to me has been dealing with addiction. And so I felt this need to give back and connect with that community, the recovering community. And so I've been volunteering, teaching mindfulness and meditation classes and movement practices to a group of folks at a recovery center, a drug and alcohol recovery center. And everyone's like, oh my God, it's so nice. Like, that's so nice of you. And I'm like, no, but you don't understand. It's like, it's like a selfish thing. Like, yes, it's nice, and yes, it's helpful to them, but like, it's so helpful to me. It's like more helpful to me maybe than it is to them. I don't know. But I think we all have this, like, as humans, we all have these like two different scales, and one's like giving and one's receiving. Like, we all have a need to give and we all have a need to receive, and we need to do both, and we kind of need to like keep them balanced. And I don't know about you all, but for me, it feels like I've just been given to, like I've been poured into, and I've just been on the receiving side for so long. Like, I've just been receiving time and money and gifts and, information, and just been receiving. And it's like my giving and receiving meter is like all out of whack. And so it's like, yeah, giving and volunteering is a nice thing to do, and it makes you feel good. But for me, it's like I need to do it. It's like I need to give. I need to give my time and need to volunteer. And so I just encourage you, like, if you're like not sure what you should be doing, or even if you're like tired and exhausted and it's a lot, go out and give, and those things become clear. What you should be doing and what direction you should go. Those questions become a lot more clear when you start to give selflessly and just kind of let that, energy flow through you. The energy that you're receiving, and being a mirror, and being a clear path that can move through. You can stay connected with me by I write on my Caring Bridge. I update there fairly often, so you can follow my Caring Bridge story. As you've heard, I share, my medical updates, but I also share like personal, emotional journey, poems that inspire me, things like that there. I host a poetry group that's totally free and open to the public. It's a virtual poetry group where we read we read our own personal poems, and we read poems from a different poet of the week that we highlight. And you don't have to ever have anything to share. You're free to just come and listen, and you don't even have to have your camera on or anything. You can just listen to poetry and be inspired. That's every other Sunday at 7 p.m. Mountain Time usually. So you can reach out to me and I'll put you on that email list. And then I also host meditations every Monday through Zoom. It's just a half-hour community meditation, and there's people from all over who join for that. And that one, you don't have to have your mic on, your camera on if you don't want. Just listen in and meditate. You don't have to sit. You can lay in bed and just listen and relax, and just receive what I have to give. So I hope this was all helpful. I hope some of you have been inspired and motivated, and I'll be posting these videos to YouTube as well, and they should be available on this event page. But I'm always available if people have any further questions or want to connect with me. Please stay connected and reach out. So I wish all the best for all of you, and we'll see you soon. Oh, and I forgot to go through questions here. There's not too many, but someone says, when is your Monday meditation are Monday nights. They're Monday nights at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Time, which is 7:30 Pacific time, PM, every Monday night. And I usually, if you follow me on Instagram, I always post on there as well. My Instagram handle is The Roaring Soul. The Roaring Soul on Instagram. And you all see me on Facebook. Okay, so I think that's it. Okay, you're welcome. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.